Check. 1, 2.
The
Brief.
This is the Debrief.
Go. Your guide to Detroit.
Your guide to Detroit's arts
and entertainment scene.
This is the Debrief.
Brief.
Welcome to the Debrief for the week of May 7th, 2018. I am your co-host. My name is Seth Wrestler.
I'm Jag.
Hey, man, what's going on? So we're down a co-host this week.
Yeah, well, I can't blame her for wanting to go see Justin Timberlake tonight.
Is that where she is?
She's
That was her excuse?
Yeah, but we have to give her hell when she comes back because you know where she's seeing him tonight?
No.
Columbus.
Ohio?
The worst state ever. Ugh. Home of the... I won't even say the name of the team.
All right, so Becky Scarcello is not here. She's off on her traveling Yaya Sisterhood of Pants, whatever thing.
Going to see Justin Timberlake, yeah.
Yes. So it's just the guys holding down the fort, but don't worry, we've got a great show for you. We have Amy Cooper, friend of yours from Acronym Detroit, and she's got an upcoming art exhibit at Tangent Gallery.
Yeah, she's got a bunch of local artists that she's put together this fantastic show. We'll explain about that.
Also, we've got an author, RJ Fox, who's got a new book called Awaiting Identification.
A book inspired by a story about the morgue in Detroit.
That's inspiring. Really? The morgue in Detroit?
He's kind of put his own spin on it. We'll let him explain later on.
I got to find out what this is all about. And if you're missing Becky, don't worry. We have started splitting up our episodes, right? So Tuesday's episode is all about everything that's going on in the Detroit arts and entertainment scene this week. And then on Thursday, we're going to be dropping our Spotlight episodes where we actually do an in-depth one-on-one interview with somebody.
And I was with Becky for this week's interview. Allie Willis, who is a legendary songwriter. Not a lot of people locally know who she is, but she wrote September for Earth, Wind & Fire.
Yeah, that's a big song for you over there, right?
Yeah, she was the first song played on the dance floor at my wedding to get everybody on the dance floor.
Wow, look at
and
that.
then it was also, she also wrote I'll Be There For You, the theme song from Friends for the Rembrandts.
Oh, and try getting that out of your head.
Yeah.
Right? I mean...
the sign she's for a great songwritership.
All right, so that interview you're going to hear on Thursday when we drop that episode.
And I will say, in the 15 years I've been in this radio and podcasting business, this is probably top 5 in terms of interviews of stories I've heard from people who we've talked to. She has some incredible behind-the-scenes story.
Don't set the expectations too high. All right. Also, want to let you know, very important announcement. You can now get this podcast on Alexa.
How do you do it?
All you have to do is say, Alexa, enable the Debrief podcast. Mm-hmm. You have an Echo?
I have a Fire and a Fire TV, which I think has Alexa in it. I've got a Google Home.
No.
Let me know when you get us on there.
I'm working on it. No, but if you've got an Amazon Echo, all you have to do is say, Alexa, enable the Debrief podcast, and then she'll enable it. You only need to do that once. Every time after that, all you have to say is, Alexa, play the Debrief podcast. She will play the latest episode. You can tell her to skip ahead or skip back or skip to a different episode, whatever you want.
While you're making breakfast, putting the coffee on, cleaning the house,
That's
whatever
what
you're
I
doing.
do.
It's great.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, in this episode, we've got all your Detroit concerts, comedy, plays, food, drink, and more. Great show. Stick around.
This is the
Concert calendar.
All right, Jag, let's start by taking a look at what's going on in the music scene around town.
Brian McKnight, he's back at 1, and he's at the Soundboard on Wednesday, May 9th. Thumbing up on Thursday, May 10th, Dita Von Teese at the Copper Coupe Burlesque Review at the Fillmore. It's a restage performance of Lazy. It was her residency at Crazy Horse Paris this past year. I don't know much about this, but
I don't either, but I'm I'm imagining that a burlesque show is pretty good when you get a residency.
So what you're saying is you're
in
imagining
Paris.
a burlesque show right now.
I am often imagining a burlesque show. That's something that I do
I'm going to slide back this
on
way.
a regular basis.
Also, Brian Jonestown Massacre at the Majestic Theater on Thursday. Friday, May 11th, Leanne Rhymes, the Ford Community and Performing Arts Center in Dearborn. Seven Dust at the Royal Oak Music Theater from your days in rock radio.
Yeah, I worked in rock radio, and this was like the angry white boy phase that was going on there. You know, all the Godsmacks and the Corns, and this makes me think of Boston, WBCN, where I was working at the time. Your hometown.
That's right, my hometown. Tom Jones at the Detroit Opera House on Friday as well. So if you want,
I would also classify that as angry white boy music. Yeah.
You know, Tom Jones is what you buy your grandmother for Mother's Day to go see. We'll get into Mother's Day gifts later on.
Don't be silly. I don't buy anything for my grandmother for Mother's Day.
Saturday, May 12th, Ghost at the Fillmore.
People are saying that this guy has got a lot of stage presence. Just an amazing show. So something to definitely go check out.
This weekend for sure. In music news, you may have heard about what's going on across the river at Caesars Windsor, where they've got this strike and the employees, labor dispute, and they're having to postpone everything. They've now postponed everything throughout the month of May. That includes Pitbull on May 25th, Lee Brice May 26th, and Daniel O'Donnell on May 27th. Other music news. Pink, you remember she had to postpone her show at Little Caesars Arena March 25th due to illness. She is doing 2 shows now next year, so she's going to make up this past year.
How sick was she?
She's got a busy schedule.
That's pretty
She's got
sick.
a lot going on.
Detroit's important, man.
Well, that's why she is making up the date April 26th next year and adding a second show April 27th. So if you missed her the first night, you can see the second night. And I will say, of the countless shows I've been to in my many years in radio, Pink was the absolute best concert I've ever seen.
Really? What made it so good?
She does like the Cirque du Soleil trapeze flying around the crowd stuff. Like if you've seen her do that at awards shows for like one song, she does it for a significant portion of the concert. And she's singing live as she's doing it, not missing a note. She's got a great, great voice, as you know. But she is hanging upside down from a trapeze in the rafters singing, Blow Me One Last Kiss or You in Your Hand or whatever song she's singing. And she's just on point, doesn't miss anything. It's a visual and audio obviously show. I went, my now wife and I saw her at the Palace in 2013, and I think a friend of hers was there too with her kid, and this is my first concert. We just looked at the kid and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's all downhill
It's all
from
downhill
here.
from here."
Nothing's ever going to live from this."
Pink is the best.
If you ever have the chance to see Pink, I cannot underscore that enough.
I'm trying to
Amazing
think
show.
what my top shows would be. Prince is definitely up there.
I'm sure.
I was lucky enough to see Prince. Massive Attack, who I love, the British trip hop band. I'm going to give that some thought.
Aerosmith is high on my list because they're my favorite band. They put on a great show.
Aerosmith puts on a great show. Don't have a trapeze. Could use one.
No, it would be like a harness or walker at this point. So locally, a story has gone national. You may have heard this. I'm sure you've heard this by now because this is picked up by CNN, MSNBC, Fox, Time. Everybody picked this up. So local radio station 105.1 The Bounce, they stopped playing Kanye West songs after Kanye called slavery a choice. They said enough is enough. The morning show started the hashtag mute Kanye, and they said we're done. We're just not going to play his music anymore. And really got some national traction. This thing blew up and went viral this past week.
Yeah, that was a big deal. I mean, I definitely heard about this. I was out in California this week traveling for work.
And you heard about it out
I
there.
I heard about this everywhere and saw it out there. I mean, I was trying to think of other times when radio stations have pulled a song. And the one thing I thought of was maybe Chris Brown with the Rihanna incident.
Yep.
Yeah, I think some stations might have
A few pulled
music.
him. It didn't last very long.
You were working in Top 40 at the time. Were you?
I was, and the odd thing was, not to go on too much of a tangent here, but I remember I was doing nights on a Top 40 station where the audience is, young teenage girls, and the night it happened, and I was going on the air just ripping Chris Brown for doing such a horrible thing, and these girls who loved Chris Brown were calling up, "Oh, maybe it's not true, or maybe you don't know the whole story, or maybe she provoked him." It was a really frightening sociological thing to see all this. But the only other thing I can think of when people really adjusted their playlists was after 9/11, and that wasn't because of what an artist said. Obviously, that was because of just some of the lyrics and some of the titles of songs that seemed inappropriate at the time.
There was speaking of Angry White Boy Rock, there was a song at the time by a band called Deadpool, a song called Bodies, and the
Drowning Pool, right?
Sorry, Drowning Pool.
Yep.
Yes, and the chorus was "Let the bodies hit the floor."
Right.
And that song was on its way to be a smash hit.
It was.
And then 9/11 happened, and obviously just with
He kind of pulled back a little bit.
So yeah, I remember I was actually in Boston at that time, and I remember pulling back on that song. The one other thing I can remember, and this was more of a regional thing, was I was in Providence, Rhode Island. And you remember the station nightclub fire that happened?
I was doing a little part-time work in Providence at the time, actually. We'll talk about
you
that
were?
later.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah. So this was the Great White concert, and unfortunately the pyrotechnics were, kind of went awry, and the building just went up in flames. And
a lot of people died.
A lot of people died in there, and there was a band that I had actually supported back in Seattle called Finch. But their single at the time was called "What It Is to Burn," and that was obviously something that we didn't play at the time because of what happened with the station fire. So sometimes it's just unfortunate lyrics. But this Kanye thing, I mean, it's different to pull a song because of the lyrics or because of the title versus pull an artist because of something.
And there was really two sides of it, because the Bounce had listeners calling in and then feedback on social media and on the internet as well, saying you're prohibiting free speech, and they said look, he has a right to say it, and we have a right to pull him.
You know what else? Dixie Chicks. Remember that?
Oh, it was a political thing, right?
That was a political thing. Yeah, I could think of that. That might be another time where people. But yeah, I mean, I get it, man. I mean, you saw Michael Che on Saturday Night Live. He's like, I don't even want to.
If you missed it on Weekend Update, they put the graphic behind him of Kanye with the quote that's saying "Slavery is a choice," and Michael Che just looks at the bubble, says pass, and they went to the next story. Huge ovation from the crowd. So
I mean, I get not wanting to just touch that. So,
but congratulations to the Bounce for taking a stand and really getting some traction and some attention for it. So good for them. Also locally, Detroit Music Awards were Friday night. Our own Becky Scarcello presented. We can't wait to hear more of that when she's back. And friend of the pod, Mahogany Jones, best MC. She won on Friday night.
We had her on a couple of episodes ago, and she was a big winner. So congratulations to her. And I know Becky's got all the inside stories, so I can't wait to hear what happened.
I heard just the tip of the iceberg.
You've talked to her since then? I
saw her on Saturday, and yeah, we've got a lot to hear from Becky coming up.
All right. Well, also congratulations to Gary Graff, who we had on the show, the great music writer who really
another friend of the pod
has been involved in putting that show together for decades, and the whole team behind that. It's really a great way to celebrate.
They do a great job.
Scene. Yeah. Coming up in just a few, we'll talk about what's happening in the Detroit food and drink scene.
The D. Brief.
All right, Jag, I know you got the chance to sit down with Amy Cooper from Acronym, and she's got this show coming up at the Tangent Gallery. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's called Found in the Underground, and Amy calls herself an urban explorer. She's a photographer by trade, and she's really taken some interesting shots of Detroit, and so she decided to get together with a lot of her people in this community of local artists and put on a show. It's going to be at the Tangent Gallery next Saturday, May 19th, in Milwaukee Junction neighborhood. There's a ton of stuff going on. And before we get into that, I asked Amy what her background was, how she even got into this whole urban exploration thing.
I started going downtown by myself, and it was one of those things where I was just looking at everything around me. Now, I was going before everything kind of had its revitalization, so it was probably like 2011, 2012, I started running around by myself. And I just kind of fell in love with the way that the city was. Now, I lived like maybe 20, 25 minutes out, and so it was a pretty close drive for me, but as I started noticing patterns and some beauty and decay and everything else like that, I started urban exploring, and that's kind of what brought me into the scene as far as getting connected with other people. And so there were groups that were like really open to that. There were some groups that weren't so much. You start to get rivalries and things like that, and there's still some of those today, but there's a lot of camaraderie if you look for it. You just have to find the right people.
It's really interesting talking to Amy, because there's this whole culture in Detroit that you might not know about, of all these artists that really embrace the urban feel of Detroit, where it was 5-10 years ago and where it comes back and how it's come back. And so I asked her how she sort of got all these people together to put this event together.
The event is just basically the way I've always tried to run Acronym, at least from my side of writing, is to put on other people. I want to make sure that other people get exposure that they deserve. And so to do an event like this, I've been hoping for the longest time that I could throw an event and not have to worry about certain sponsors or people that don't get along with other people or don't like a certain company. So it's all just under me. I don't have any other sponsorships. So I'm pulling in the artist, I'm curating who's in it, and I'm looking at it based on their creative talent, not just who they are, what their name is, sort of thing.
I like events like this that showcase other artists. I mean, obviously, that's what we try and do here with this podcast.
Right.
It's basically just shine a spotlight on stuff going on, because there's so much exciting stuff going on. So that's cool. I'm really into this kind of a thing.
No, it's a really cool thing that it's not some big, giant conglomerate. And like the point that she made, is it's not influenced by having all these other sponsors and sort of thing. It's just sort of the pure art of the whole thing. So I asked her what you can expect at the event.
There's 2 rooms in the Tangent Galleries. So on one side, there's going to be vending from artwork to jewelry to oddities and things like two-headed ducklings and like beetles that have been fashioned into jewelry and stuff. So that's just like, that's one particular person that's going to be in the show. And then the other side is going to be just gallery space where things are going to be on the walls and people can walk around. We have some urban explorers. We have some classic Detroit photography. We've got photography just in general as terms of modeling and things like that. And then we've got 2 graffiti artists that do wonderful murals, very versatile. A couple film directors. One of the directors actually both directors that I'm working with on this, they worked on a thing called Untamed Tongue, which was a empowerment video for the African American community. So we're going to be showing that film. Like that's like the big centric film that we're going to be showing. It's about 8 minutes long or something, and it's done by Lance Newton. So it's a really cool film.
That's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, and what I love about it is a lot of this stuff that you're going to see at this event is not stuff you would see in any other city.
Yeah.
It's really got a Detroit feel to
Well,
it.
I love that they're showing off the graffiti artists and the murals, and I will say I've never seen murals in another city. And you know this. I mean, I've bounced around a lot working in radio, different places. The murals in this city are amazing.
There's so much talent in the city. You just have to know where to find it, you know. And you'll hear in this next clip with Amy is, you know, I asked her about some of the unusual exhibitors and that sort of thing, and I went to make a joke, but it actually led into another interesting angle of this whole story.
One of the artists that's on there is Kelly Johnston, and she has... It'll be like a painting that'll have different abstract pieces, and then she'll like take a photo of a cat and put it in there or something like that. But it's super intriguing to look at. So there's something for everybody. There'll be a couple erotica artists, but not like too crazy. But
It's not going to scare away your mom.
No, not at all. We actually have some parents that are like super jazzed because there's a couple younger kids that are in this. They're probably like all 21 and up, because this event is 21 and up. But they've been sharing it constantly, and they're like, oh, sorry about my dad. He's just really excited. I'm like, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Does erotica scare your mom?
I'm not going to answer that.
I'm just kidding. I already know the answer.
No, but I mean, it was cool. It's like she mentioned erotica, and I'm like, oh, don't bring your mom. And I'm just as a quick joke, and she's like, no, these kids, 21, 22, but they've got their parents supporting them, which is awesome to see all this local support for artists.
My mom is totally behind my erotica career, so I'll just have you know.
Have you met Stormy Daniels yet?
Yeah, never mind.
So a question I asked Amy was about all this live music and all these live performances that are more than just music that she's going to have at the show.
And we've got live performances all night, too. On top of having the musical performances, we're also going to have a aerial performer. So that'll be pretty cool, too.
What do you mean by aerial performer?
They bring a rig, and there's a couple different performers, and they do like ribbons and different things like that. So they'll be extended into the air. And we've got somebody I think is also demoing yoga, and somebody else is doing henna tattooing. So there's quite a few things that people can get into.
Really cool event, and you can hear me, just asking about all the different things going on. And it's a really inexpensive event. If you want to check it out next Saturday night, tickets are $5 and $7 at the door. 6:30 next Saturday night. Again, Tangent Gallery. It's called Found in the Underground. Amy's company Acronym is putting it on. You can find out more info on her website at acronymofficial.com.
All right, speaking of Jag's mom, coming up in just a few, we'll talk about some Mother's Day gift ideas.
The D. The D. Breathe.
Food and drink.
This is what happens. Becky goes away for 1 week.
You made it a point before we started recording, say we had to keep ourselves in check because Becky's not here to do it.
No, I
this
just
week.
needed to keep you in check. That's all I'm doing. Let's talk about food and drinks.
Glass houses, Seth. Glass houses.
Let's talk about food and drink. Here's what's going on around town. A couple of exciting stories. First of all, congratulations to bartender Tara Jagodzinski. She has won an all-expense paid trip to Tales of the Cocktail. Now, that's in New Orleans. I know you spent a couple of years down there in New Orleans, right?
I lived down there for 3 years, and it's impossible to go to every event in New Orleans, as you might imagine. But I remember hearing about this event a lot. It's not a big public thing. It's kind of...
It's an industry thing.
It is, but if you're a bartender and you're really good, this is the Super Bowl of bartending.
Yeah, I mean, this is... And it's a kind of like a trade event, meaning that there's a lot of education there. This is about making bartenders even better bartenders, and there's a lot focusing on mixology and understanding spirits. I know a little bit about this because I used to host a food and travel podcast.
Right, okay.
And I actually interviewed one of the guys from Tales of the Cocktail. I mean, this has grown up over the last, 10, 15 years into just like the industry event. And
there's no better city to have it in than New Orleans, where that city is always drunk.
So what happened with this competition, this is one of those things where you get a liquor brand in who will host a bartending competition, all over the country, and then send a bartender to Tales of the Cocktail.
And it was a tequila brand, Exotico Tequila. At Tequila Blue and Royal Oak, where this local part of the competition was.
So Tara works over at the Peterborough Chinese Restaurant and Cocktail Bar. That's over in Cass Corridor. And the winning cocktail was a spicy tequila cocktail. It's rimmed with wasabi and salt.
Whoa.
And garnished with a bruleed candied ginger.
I feel like that is something I'd see on Top Chef and have no idea what a bruleed candied ginger is.
That's kind of interesting. It's like tequila, but like some Asian spices and some Asian ingredients going on.
I mean, like tequila on its own packs a punch, and then you're going to make it more spicy. I'm a little intimidated by this cocktail. What else is in it?
Ginger syrup, blood orange, lime juice, and some sriracha as well.
Oh God, sriracha too. Sriracha, wasabi, and tequila. Yeah. That's a little rich for my blood.
All right. Also going on, we have 4 Michigan breweries who have received gold medals at the World Beer Cup in Nashville. This is an international event. There's over 8,000 entries from 66 countries. Here are the 4 winners. Are you a beer drinker, by the way?
Yeah, I'm a big beer drinker, and of all the places that I've lived, I've never lived in a state that's got a craft beer scene like Michigan does. I can't keep track of all the breweries here.
All right, so tell me which of these you've had. Tilted Axis Brewing Company of Lapeer won gold for its Dark of the Moon, which is in the American-style wheat beer category.
I have not had that, but I want to now, looking at the description.
Yeah, I am a wheat beer fan. Territorial Brewing Company of Springfield won for its BC Light, which was in the light lager category.
I actually have not seen that in this part of the state very much, but I will keep an eye out for that.
New Holland Brewing Company of Holland won for its Pilgrim's Dole, which is under the Old Ale or Strong Ale category.
I've had several New Hollands. I have not had the Pilgrim's Dole.
And Silver Harbor Brewing Company of St. Joseph won for its Ship-Faced, SHIP, which they won in the category of Barley Wine Style Ale.
I knew that was going to trip you up.
Hey, I did fine. I know what I'm doing.
You had to take your time over that one. I understand.
I didn't have any beer before the show.
Yeah.
So congratulations. Total of 10 Michigan breweries received medals. Congratulations to them. And speaking of congratulations, the Detroit's small business development program called Motor City Match is back again. This gives out grants to small businesses. It's the 12th round of grants, and there were a number of winners that are related to food and drinks.
Motor City Match is an incredible program, and just one of so many that helps out small businesses starting out here in Detroit.
Yeah, so the owners of Astro Coffee are working on something called Okra Bakery. They won some money. You've also got Spotlight, which is a live entertainment gallery, bar, cafe space that's it's going to be over near the Heidelberg project.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, early 2019, hopefully. You've got Petty Cash Kitchen and Cocktail Bar, which will be a restaurant near Green Acres. Brewery Faison, speaking of beer, I'm excited about this one. It's a husband and wife team. Rachel and Paul Zlaga are working on a 9,000 square foot brew house featuring a 15-barrel system focused on Belgian-style beers.
Those Belgian beers are great in the summertime.
I am a fan. And finally, Shane Street Grocers, Pole Town Market. So this is over on Shane Street, and they are working on a store that's going to feature local produce, dry goods, stuff like that. So congratulations. A lot going on in the food and drink scene.
That'll be a cool thing for the East Side when it opens up over there.
Coming up in just a few, we'll talk about stand-up comedy.
This is the D.
Breathe. Family fun.
All right, Jag. So of course we were looking for ideas for Mother's Day because I don't know about you, I'm not really good at this holiday.
As we record this now, 6 days out, and I'm still scrambling for something to do for Mom.
I know what I'm getting your mother. It's my mother that I don't. It's just gonna be that kind of a show.
Becky, come back, Becky. Where are you?
All right, so we asked people to email us, hello@thedebriefdetroit.com with Mother's Day ideas. We get anything in the bag?
Yeah, we got about, we'll give you the top 10 of the ones that we got. Michelle from Royal Oak suggested Mother's Day brunch at the Detroit Zoo, which, great suggestion. It is now sold out, so if you slept on that too late, they do so many great things over there. Let's switch off here since we got the pile here in front of us.
All right, so Kristen from Lake Orion. Said the Lake Orion Flower and Art Fair in downtown. I haven't been up there for this. I haven't spent a lot of time in Lake Orion.
No, it's a nice little area. You should definitely spend some more time up there.
I did a stand-up comedy open mic out there at one point, so I've been there for like an evening, and then I left. But
No, it's a cool little area. Spend some time up there.
All right.
This next one is from Vanessa in Ann Arbor. Mother's Day weekend spring plant sale. That is at the Botanical Gardens at U of M. So that'll be a cool thing to check out. Botanical Gardens down there if your mom is into flowers and botanical stuff.
I will say this, and please don't think less of me as a man since I got here, but one of the things that I did since moving to Michigan is that I decided that, this is before I moved in the house. I had this apartment with a deck out back, and I just went, I'm going to do urban gardening. Like, I'm going to figure out how to just deck this out.
How'd that work out for you?
It actually worked pretty well. I mean, you have to figure out what works and sort of what works here, and you have to figure out which way you're facing. This was facing north, so it was always in the shade.
Okay.
So it was a little tough.
Did you successfully grow anything?
Yeah, I mean, nothing. There's not enough sun to grow anything that you can eat.
Okay.
So it was like flowers or plants or stuff like that. But I actually like going to these shows now. And the thing they told me is that here in Michigan, you have to wait until Mother's Day. They say don't plant anything before Mother's Day because you might. We got snow in April. This was the longest winter ever.
My wife taught me about these wonderful things called the hostas. These plants, they'll grow through concrete. Like, you can't kill them, which we would kill them if there were anything else. So they're actually starting to sprout in our front yard. It's great.
All right, so I would do the botanical garden plant sale there. Also, Tamara at Boston Edison said MichiganAwesome.com. They've got necklaces over there.
Yeah, they've got necklaces and soaps, and if you wanted to get your mom something Michigan-y, if she's a real diehard Michigander.
Is that a word, Michigan?
It is now. So Michigan, there's all kinds of Michigan-themed related stuff. She can wear her Great Lakes State Pride around her neck, so that's pretty cool.
All right.
Jason from Rochester. This is awesome. Hub Stadium up in Auburn Hills. This is one of the guys that emailed us. You can tell by this one. Hub Stadium in Auburn Hills. 100-foot buffet with a bottomless bar. Limit 4 due to Michigan law.
Wait, what?
It's a bottomless bar, but it's like a mimosa Bloody Mary bar, but the limit is 4. It's because of a Michigan law.
That's not bottomless. Wait, so that's a Michigan law which says you can only have so much to drink at an all-you-can-drink?
Yeah. But here's the best part of this whole thing. Besides
That's a lame law.
This is probably why. So 100-foot buffet, limit 4 drinks, because it's axe throwing. If your mom can successfully throw, she gets 3 throws of the axes, she can win a $25 gift card. So have mom chuck that axe at the target, and if she can hit it, she can win $25 for your next visit.
All right.
Thank you, Jason.
There's this comes from Sterling, by the way, in Warren. There's a Mother's Day hat and gloves brunch that's happening at DeCarlo's Banquet and Convention Center in Warren. So if you want to head over there, my mom's not really a gloves person, but that doesn't mean your mom might not be.
That's true. To each her own. Ellen from Troy.
Does your mom wear a hat?
No, she spends too much on her hair.
Oh, I understand.
Ellen from Troy says a Mother's Day brunch and bowl. That's at Imagine Royal Oak. That's Mother's Day morning, Sunday at 11 a.m. If your mom's into bowling, or if she's into you having a good time and she want to drag her there, feel free for that. Do that.
This one, Kathy Ryan, who's a comedian. She actually was a crime reporter here for a long time until she retired. Now she's doing stand-up comedy. I took the class over at Mark Ridley's comedy class with her. She's from Grosse Pointe, and she said go over to Pewabic Pottery. You haven't been there. You don't know about
tell me
this.
a little bit about it.
Oh, my God. So anytime...
Is it like Ghost, the movie? And they're making
No, nothing like that. Anytime you see pottery anywhere, like Tiger Stadium's got Pewabic Pottery. Anytime you look around this town and you see pottery or tiles that look like they've been there forever, that they're a really part of the design, it's probably from Pewabic.
Okay, cool.
And I've been over there. We interviewed them a while back for the podcast. I mean, you can go in and do all this stuff. They're actually expanding everything they're doing over there.
Really?
Yeah, they've broken ground, and they're working on making it a lot bigger. Yes, definitely something from Pewabic Pottery.
One more email here. Brandy from Highland Park. This is a cool event. Jennifer Lewis, the mother of Black Hollywood. She has played moms in so many movies. She's calling herself the mother of Black Hollywood. That's what she's known as. She's got a book signing at the Charles H. Wright Museum. So for Mother's Day weekend, the mother of Black Hollywood, that's Saturday, 5 to 9 at the Charles H. Wright Museum.
All right, and of course this whole Mother's Day thing was inspired because we were sitting here talking with our intern, Spencer, and he was talking about his Mother's Day tradition that he does every year. He takes his mom to Cedar Point.
Which I think is awesome.
Have you've been to Cedar Point?
I have not, but I think it's cool that he gets to take his mom, that she's into that.
Yeah, my mom would not be into that. There's no way.
No.
Are you a roller coaster guy?
I'll do them. I'm not like a roller coaster freak, but if I'm in, when in Rome, I'll ride them.
Now, you heard about this, right? They've got the new one, the Steel Vengeance, which is the brand new one they've been touting forever, and then it shut down because they had cars hitting each other, and they actually.
We should qualify this though. It wasn't like some violent collision you're going to see on Good Morning America. It was one car was in the station, and then the car behind it pulled in. There were people in both cars, and they bumped. It was like one of those like 5 mile an hour things, and a couple people got checked out by first aid. Everybody was fine. And they reopened it the next day.
Spencer, is it still on? You and your mom going to Cedar Point? You're not worried about the... you're going? He's like, yeah. Oh, we're going. Mom's not scared of some bumping cars. All right, coming up...
Oh, real quick, before we go, Becky suggested Bon 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 chocolates. She wanted us to mention that.
I did check that out. I looked at that online. They have classes there. So I don't know if you can make chocolates or what it is, but that looked pretty cool.
Sign me up.
Yeah. Coming up in just a few... There's actually a lot of cool stuff going on with some museums around town.
Yeah.
And we will take a look at it.
Welcome to the deep. Breathe.
Funny stuff.
Jag, let's talk about the comedy clubs.
Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle this weekend has the very well-known Kathleen Madigan.
Yeah, she's a big name. I know this about Kathleen Madigan. She could play bigger rooms if she wanted to. She loves coming back here and doing Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle. It's one of her favorite clubs. She always makes a point of coming back and playing that room because it's just been, it's one of the places where she got started, and it's such a legendary venue.
And it's relationships. I mean, you've talked about Mark Ridley on this show countless times, and the relationships that he has in the comedy community. It's no surprise there. Ann Arbor Comedy Showcase, the political comedy of Hari Kondabolu, political comedy in Ann Arbor. I would not have expected that. I think I know which way that's going to go. Not saying right or wrong, just saying. Punchline Comedy Lounge, John Henton is going to be there this weekend. And the Holly Hotel has Zach Martina and Diego Anastasia.
Zach Martina, very funny dude. Little known fact, he was the very first guest we had on this podcast.
That's right.
Yeah, go back and listen to episode number 1. You can hear an interview with him. That dude's funny. Diego, too. I know Diego, and first of all, super nice guy. Very low-key, very mellow. Cerebral comedy. Like, you gotta
think.
You gotta...
Not have too many drinks at the show?
He's witty. I think he's hilarious. I'm big fan.
And if your mom needs to laugh, Mother's Day brunch with Mike Bonner and Kool-Aid at Punchline in Southfield. So what mother doesn't need to laugh? Seth's mother really needs to laugh because you're her son. Crickets. In comedy news, I was trying to get you back on the mother joke from earlier.
I know. Nice try. Pay for effort.
Last week we talked about Tim Allen's Last Man Standing and how Home Improvement might come back, but he was still a little butthurt over the fact that Last Man Standing had gotten canceled by ABC. Well, now Last Man Standing is going to come back, and Fox has picked it up for the 2018-19 season. So Tim Allen's getting his more recent show that he's got the real passion for, Last Man Standing. He's getting that back.
Good for him. I always got the feeling that he was a little miffed, though, at the way Last Man Standing ended.
He was salty.
Yeah,
he was very salty over that.
He was not happy. But I mean, I imagine that, Tim the Tool Man also has a place in his heart because it was obviously the character that made him such a big name.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like
he felt like it was weird because he wasn't finished with Last Man Standing. It would feel weird to go back to Home Improvement, but now he's got Last Man Standing.
And you remember there were a lot of questions because that is a show, and he plays a character who was conservative on
Last Man Standing.
Yes, and there were these people who questioned whether or not that was a political cancellation. From my understanding, it was just numbers. But I think that was always an element to it.
And then people they talk about the Hollywood and East and West Coast elites. Well, Roseanne did well, and a lot of her support has come from what they call the flyover states, the middle part of the country. So that kind of set the stage to bring Tim Allen's show back.
I do wonder if that was a factor. Coming up, we've got sports.
Debrief.
Want more? Text the word Detroit to the number 444-999.
Hey, I want to mention a few things that's going on with some of the museums around town. Because there's actually some really cool stuff. First of all, congratulations going out to the Detroit Historical Museum. This is a big deal. They've received the nation's highest museum and library honor for the project Detroit 67, looking back to move forward. I don't know if you saw this at the Detroit Historical Museum.
I haven't, but I meant to get out there. And I saw the Detroit movie, and there was so much that came out for the 50th anniversary last year.
Yeah, this is still going to be running through 2019. 2019, so there is still time. But this was really cool to head over to the Detroit Historical Museum. They put together this fantastic documentary, and the exhibit is just amazing. And of course, it all looks back at the riot, the rebellion of 1967, and everything that happened here in Detroit. Big deal because the museum is the only Michigan institution to be named a National Medal winner from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And in all of history, only 2 other museums in Michigan have ever received the award. So you've got Art Train USA in Ann Arbor, which won it in 2006, and Henry Ford in Dearborn, obviously another just world-class museum, which won the honor in 1998.
I was going to say, it puts them in some pretty good company.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So if you haven't checked out Detroit 67, like I said, go check it out. It's for a guy like me who is not from here,
right?
It was eye-opening to go see this exhibit, for sure. Because I really,
if you didn't grow up with the history here, you really don't know. Yeah.
Also, the Detroit Zoo. This is big news. Developing a large aquarium on Detroit's riverfront.
If this aquarium happens and it's half as cool as the Detroit Zoo, I'll get in line now.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, you've got the aquarium on Belle Isle and all that, but having the zoo do an aquarium, the penguinarium. Have you seen the penguins in the zoo? By the way,
I have. The exhibit's amazing.
Yeah. So I'm picturing that downtown with all the other cool stuff happening downtown. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, so it could cost up to $200 million. They have not decided on a location along the riverfront just yet. They're looking at either Hart Plaza or the Ford Auditorium, one of those 2 places. And they expect that the project could draw up to 1 million visitors a year.
That wouldn't surprise me at all.
No. I don't know how many penguins it would draw.
Well, they'll keep the penguins in Royal Oak at the zoo.
That's true.
Yeah, there's way too much money's gone into that exhibit to move them. Maybe they'll have a second penguin exhibit.
And other big news, RoboCop statue. This was a big deal a few years ago. You remember this? They started with a tweet, and then next thing you know, they've got this big 10-foot tall bronze statue.
I was living here when this happened, and this was a big deal. Like, people went nuts over this. It was just one of those things that kind of caught fire and went from there.
I remember, like in Philadelphia, you had the big deal over the Rocky statue and where are they going to put it, and that kind of thing. Anyway, they've had this statue for a while. This is, of course, the 1987 hit movie RoboCop. If you haven't seen it, go see it.
Oh, yeah.
Still an amazing movie.
Right.
The special effects, they were good at the time, but still an amazing movie. They found a permanent home for it. It's going to be at the Michigan Science Center.
See, when you make the comparison between RoboCop in Detroit and Rocky in Philadelphia, I will say this. There are a lot of cool people from Detroit. For Philadelphia, the most well-liked person from Philadelphia is just a movie character.
Yeah.
You're not a sports fan. If you were a sports fan, you'd know about Philly fans.
I know what you're getting there. Yeah, you're getting at there. Anyway, overseeing the whole process was art conservation expert Giorgio Gekas. I'm excited to see this. Apparently, it's going to be about 13 feet tall when you include the pedestal when it's all said and done. So
that's awesome.
You had a chance to sit down and talk to an author of a book about dead Detroiters or Detroiters found in a morgue. Is that what's?
That was the inspiration for the book, and it's an interesting story. It's a different take on some of the stuff we've heard here around Detroit, but it's pretty cool.
We'll get into it next.
The debrief. The debrief.
Sports Report.
All right, Jag, what's going on?
Hot off the presses as we record this on Monday night. This is just a couple hours old. Stan Van Gundy officially out from the Pistons. He was the coach and the GM, only made the playoffs one time in the last 4 years. There were rumors about whether or not he'd be gone, and now he's gone, and we don't know who's going to be around to replace him.
I mean, is that weird to get rid of the one coach without having another one lined up?
No, not at all, because, they talk about the proverbial hot seat is the cliche in sports. Oh, this coach is on the hot seat. He wasn't getting the job done, and they feel like firing the coach is often the cure to all evils. And by most standards, he couldn't handle the dual job of being the coach and the GM. So will they bring in somebody else to do both, or will they bring in 2 different guys to do 2 different jobs?
You need a job, right? You think about submitting your resume?
Not for that job.
Come on.
Not all bad news for the Pistons, though. The Pistons have teamed up with the Detroit Symphony Orchestra on a multi-year partnership for youth education and programming. They're going to contribute to the Sphinx Honors Competition. That's something we've talked about on the show, right?
It is. We talked to a woman from Sphinx a while back, and that's an amazing program.
They do a lot for kids and getting them excited about math and sciences. Also, every 4th grader in Detroit Public Schools will get to see a concert over the course of the year. All 4,750 of them will get to go to to the DSO to see a show thanks to this program.
We have said it before, but I'll say it again. I really do think we might have the coolest symphony in all of America.
There's no think here. We do.
They're always in the news for doing stuff like this.
Whether it's a cool program for the community and kids like this, or just a cool event they're doing where they're playing the music to, a big pop culture moment. Very cool stuff. Also, Joe Louis seats. You probably know somebody that has seats from Tiger Stadium. You can now buy seats from Joe Louis Arena, if there's any left, because here's the catch. They made them available to season ticket holders first. That is through May 11th. If there are any left after May 11th, this Saturday, May 12th, they go on sale to the rest of the general public. They're $150 each. You have to buy a minimum of 2, because it's probably weird to have just one sitting there, but you can have seats from the iconic Joe Louis Arena in your office or in your home or wherever you want.
You know who has seats from Tiger Stadium? We were talking about him earlier. Is Mark Ridley?
Does he?
Yeah. So his back office there in the Comedy Castle. When Mike Jeter and I were doing the Detroit versus Detroiters podcast, it was all about the Detroiters TV show. Mark Ridley was our first guest. We got to go back and hang out with him back in his office, and we saw one of those seats there.
Mike's a tall guy. Did he fit in one of those chairs?
Oh, no, we weren't sitting in them.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't like that.
Were they like bronzed?
Yeah.
Yeah, people tend to take very good care of them.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here. I bet you Mark Ridley gets another pair of seats to match.
It'd be a cool set, Tiger Stadium and the Joe. Detroit Roller Derby this Saturday at the Masonic Temple, doubleheader as they always do. I love the roller derby names.
Yes.
So the first game match, I'm not even sure what you call it. It's the Detroit Men's Roller Derby versus the Cincinnati Battering Rams, and the nightcap is the Motor City Disassembly Line versus the Border City Brawlers. You can get all the info on that at DetroitRollerDerby.com. I love the name Motor City Disassembly Line. The slow roll is back tonight and Mondays throughout the summer, except for holidays, of course, like Memorial Day. But you know more about this than I do. This is like the bike ride through downtown. The
slow roll?
Yeah.
Well, so it's hard because we record this podcast, obviously, on Monday nights. So I actually haven't been on a slow roll. My girlfriend joined last year.
Okay.
So this is, are you a bike rider at all?
When I was a kid, not in my adulthood.
So I like riding my bike. It's tough, obviously, because you can only do it so many months out of the year here. Mm-hmm. There is an awesome bike culture here in the city of Detroit.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you have to do that I'd never seen before, I didn't know this until I actually watched the TV show Detroiters, and then my girlfriend explained it because she grew up here. You have to get lights and put them in the spokes of your bike. And the folks here in Detroit just pimp out their bikes with sound systems. It's crazy. And if you want to see the most amazing pimped out bikes, go on Slow Roll. And it's just, hundreds of people going around and riding their bike, through town along a route, and it happens every Monday night.
You know what we should do?
What?
You, me, and Becky should record the podcast on bikes on a slow roll.
Yeah, right.
No, we can make it happen. We'll just make sure we'll get wireless mics. We'll stay in close enough proximity to each other. We can make this happen.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to work. But slow roll, it's on my bucket list.
You may remember us talking about this last week. So the Michigan football team had their overseas trip. This time they went to Paris. And I was asking last week, we were all asking last week, who pays for that? How does that happen? Well, Coach Harbaugh has revealed that it was some big-time program donors that paid for the trip. It's about an $800,000 trip. Bobby Kotick and Don Graham have split the bill. He revealed their names last week at the Eiffel Tower. Kotick is the CEO of Activation Blizzard. That's the company that makes the Call of Duty video games. So he's got the money to donate. And Graham is the founder of Graham Group, an alliance of industrial businesses and investment management firms. And when you donate this amount of money to the Michigan football program, you get some perks. Like Kotick was an honorary co-captain during a game a couple of years ago, along with Tom Brady. Like he went at the 50-yard line with Tom Brady before the game.
So, all right, we've established that I am not all that knowledgeable when it comes to sports. Mm-hmm. So as a guy who knows a lot more about sports than I do, Does this rub you the wrong way the way it rubs me the wrong way?
1,000%.
Because this strikes me as one of those...
So, I mean, there's a million layers to this. It's probably its own whole podcast, but very quickly, the NCAA are just unbelievable when it comes to rules and regulations and what's a violation. You could lose a scholarship if somebody buys you dinner. But somehow it's okay to send an entire football team to Paris for a week. I don't understand the logic there. And then the whole thing of, these athletes don't get paid any money, but they make $1 gajillion for these schools in terms of TV contracts and all that. Should they be paid? It's such a murky thing, and it just really bothers me that they can't get a job or a free meal, but they get to somehow work around the rules and take a trip like this.
Isn't this what Occupy Wall Street was about? Am I wrong about that?
I don't know if I see the connection there.
I thought that's what they were protesting. I don't know. I thought it was Paris.
Stick to your wheelhouse, Seth.
No, but seriously, there does feel like there's some sort of
chicanery.
Well, I was going to say class issue here. You know what I mean? Like this just seemed. I don't know. There's something
like
about
the players are being exploited. Is that?
I don't know how to phrase it. I really don't. There's just something that feels
icky.
Yes.
About this whole thing?
Yes.
Okay. Finally, Tigers are in Texas for the beginning part of the week, but they come home to play the Seattle Mariners this weekend. All events this weekend are special event days at Comerica if you want to head down to the ballpark. Friday night, Star Wars night. That should draw a good crowd. Saturday is on-field photo day, and Sunday, of course, being Mother's Day, pink out the park. Players will have the pink bats and the pink parts of the uniform, and then wear pink if you go to the game on Sunday for Mother's Day. Stick around. We're going to take a look at what's happening on stages around the Detroit area.
This is the D.
Detroit.
This is the D.
Brave.
All right, Jag, I'll bite. Who is R.J. Fox?
He is an author. He lives down in Ann Arbor. He's actually a high school teacher down there. And he has a new book coming out this weekend called Awaiting Identification. Would you like me to explain the book?
Yes, I am curious. Because I just heard morgue, dead people, yeah.
So basically, he sees dead people. No, seriously. So the whole idea was that it came from this Free Press article that he read, and he'll have this explain this in a second. But it was a feature on the Wayne County morgue and all these bodies that just go unidentified. So he saw this article. He can explain it better than I can.
It all started back in 1999. It was an article in the Free Press with the headline "Mystery Bodies Awaiting Identification." And the story just talked about the hundreds of bodies that show up in a morgue every year in Detroit, Wayne County Medical Examiner's Office, that had no identity on them. Nobody knows who they are, who they were, and they just get buried without any identity. It made me sad to think about this being a reality. So I thought that would actually be an interesting story. So I decided to write a screenplay inspired by the article with fictional characters. And it's not a detective story. There's really no police presence at all. It's more about the humanizing of these sort of nameless, faceless victims and who they were, and they cross paths throughout the book. So even though there's 5 separate storylines, they all intersect, and then they each are trying to better their lot in life before they ultimately die. I mean, we know they're dead for page 1, but my question was, how do I tell their story in a meaningful way and give a sense of closure to their lives? It was first a screenplay, option to a producer. For a while I thought the movie was going to get made. It didn't, so then I turned it into a novel that's coming out this week.
I really like this idea.
It's pretty cool.
This reminds me of something. I remember when I lived in Boston, there was an article that came out called The 12 Tribes of Storrow Drive, and it was all about the different types of people who live in Boston. I remember thinking, how cool would it be if, you had people from different walks of life, crossing paths like this. And so I really like this idea.
It's what he's doing in the book. And I asked him about the characters in the book because he had to start out, he basically has this newspaper article from the Free Press, nothing to go on, and it's got to use his imagination to create the backstories of all these people. So I asked him about the characters in the book.
Each character kind of represents different dimensions of Detroit. They kind of start out as stereotypes in a way. You have like a dead homeless person, for example. Some people have their preconceived notions of a homeless person. Some people have sympathy. Some just say, oh, whatever, they're just homeless. But then we find out that this is a man who just wants to make a friend through the course of the book. He's just trying to make a connection. People just assume he wants money and wants to buy booze and this and that. But then we find out, no, he just wants a friend. We have a drug dealer. He's selling prescription drugs to seniors who can't afford prescription drugs on their own. But he's trying to go clean. He just got his first big DJ gig. It was supposed to be his last night of dealing, but then things go wrong when he makes a poor choice that leads to his death. We have a woman who's a a dancer moving back from New York City. She's coming back home to make amends with her mother, who she's been estranged with, and she comes home sort of just to kind of get her feet back on the ground. And then we have kind of a career criminal who's trying to help his dying father. And then we have sort of the villain in the book is a man called the Zealot, who kills prostitutes and bums in the name of God. He's the most creepy character. He's the only story that's actually in first person. And also just because he's so different from the other characters in terms of his temperament, it kind of just fit that character to be a first-person point of view.
I mean, this is an interesting way to showcase all the different people in a city. It's a pretty dark view.
He's like reverse engineering it because he's starting from the point of death and
Right.
working backwards, which I find really interesting.
That makes sense.
You know, one of the interesting things about the book, though, is he was inspired by this Free Press article back in '99, and he was trying to write the story in present day, but it was kind of a labor of love. It took some time to write. He's been working on this thing for 20 years. And Detroit in 2018, not the same as Detroit in 1999. So we kind of had to make a decision about that.
Was a challenge with this book because I started writing this thing, like I said, in 1999. It was always meant to be in the present day. But at one point, my publisher and I realized let's change the setting to 1999 because the Detroit that I was writing about is not the Detroit today. So some of the locations are no longer there that I wrote about in the book because there are some real locations in there. So it was actually kind of cool to be able to go back kind of in time, not that far long ago, but still kind of a time capsule of a different era, kind of the end of an era for good and for bad. So the 99 setting allowed us, for example, to incorporate Tiger Stadium had just closed just before the book takes place. 3 Floors of Fun at St. Andrews Hall is sort of the central nexus point for the characters. So that's kind of the heyday of St. Andrews back in the 90s. So that's in there as well. And then obviously the techno aspect of the book. Techno music is sort of the backdrop to the story in many ways. The DJ is a techno DJ. The late 90s was, kind of the height of techno with the big techno legends of Detroit who were still in their prime. It just made sense to set it in the late 90s as opposed to 2018.
That was really interesting how we had to make an adjustment and sort of call an audible on the fly like that because so much was changing.
Well, yeah, you and I are now getting to the age. I mean, I'm already at the age. You're going to get there very quickly, where you can actually go back in time to a period that you remember. Like it's far enough removed.
I'm there. I'm not
that
that
it's
much
very
younger
different.
than you. Yeah, okay.
But you know what I'm saying? We go back to the 90s, and I remember that vividly. But it's very different from now to be able to go back in time that way. And yeah, that's a cool thing to be able to do and see.
Yeah, kind of a time capsule of where the city was 20 years ago, Devil's
Right.
Night and Halloween Night and when all that happened. So the big event is coming up on Saturday, and I'll let Arjun tell you about it.
I'm just super pumped for this. This is like a celebration, like I said, of 20 years. So Saturday night, May 12th, at Page's Bookshop on Grand River in Detroit. That is from 6 to 7:30, and we're going to have a techno legend performing there, Sean Deason. He'll be spinning before, as people are coming in, and then as a signing takes place. Also, I got Aaron Foley, author of How to Live in Detroit Without Being a Jackass. He will be doing the Q&A moderation, which I am super pumped about. And then afterwards is an after party at Northern Lights Lounge. That's on 660 Baltimore in Detroit, near Wayne State area, with Mike Clark, a.k.a. Agent X, DJ Minx, Gerald Mitchell, and DJ Mike Dynasty. We have some live paintings that will be taking place, some artists doing scenes depicting moments from the book, and several other pieces of entertainment. So I am just super excited to celebrate this book with friends, family, and strangers.
Now, there's a lot of cool stuff going on there that he mentioned. First of all, Aaron Foley, who...
I saw your eyes light up when he said that.
Well, we had him, Mike Jeter and I had him on the podcast back when we were doing the Detroit versus Detroiters podcast. Mm-hmm. And his book, How to
Live in Detroit Without Being a Jackass.
I read when I first moved to Detroit.
That's a good decision.
And honestly, it shaped a lot about how I feel about Detroit or think about Detroit. Mm-hmm. He works over for Mayor Duggan's administration now.
Does he really?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a controversy because he's a journalist. I mean, that's his training and his upbringing, who is working, for a city administration. It's a very unique role. He's the official storyteller of the city of Detroit. But he also does a lot of writing. He's got a website that he's working on. He's a really interesting dude. Nice guy, too.
You say controversial, but that's such a common thing for journalists, TV and radio people to get into PR and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but it's strange. Like the Metro Times has been kind of sniping at him. He'll snipe.
Wait,
at the
are you
Metro
saying the
Times.
Metro Times is being snarky about something?
Yeah, they've kind of it's this very low grade, low level kind of running thing where they will pick at each other.
It's just a little bit of shade. It's not really dark shade. It's just a little bit of shade.
There's definitely some shade, though. The other thing I'll mention is Northern Lights, which is a very cool place to go. That's my girlfriend and her sister love going there. It's like their favorite place to go. So that's a cool venue to go see all this stuff that's going on.
Okay, so one more time, the book is called Awaiting Identification. You can pick it up at Page's Bookstore as of this Saturday, or any local bookstore. That was something that was important, RJ, was to support local businesses. If you're not able to get down to a local bookstore, you can, of course, get it on Amazon. It's an ebook and paperback, and he's signing the book 6 to 7:30 at Page's this Saturday.
This is the Deep Brief.
On stage.
All right, let's quickly run through some of the things that are happening on stages around Detroit. First of all, Detroit Public Theater has the world premiere of Birthday Candles. This is actually something they commissioned from Noah Hadel, so go check that out. Fox Theater has Rodgers and Hammerstein's The King and I. Michigan Opera. This is something, we might get you into opera with this, Jag.
I'm intrigued.
It's called The Summer King, and it tells the story of Negro League's baseball legend Josh Gibson. I know you're a big sports fan. Do you know much about Josh Gibson?
I don't. I know even less about opera.
All right, so you might have to go check this out. This is actually something that they co-produced with the Pittsburgh Opera.
As long as they didn't talk hockey, they'll be fine. Because Pittsburgh and Detroit, that's like the forbidden area. You don't get into that.
Well, apparently they get along when it comes to opera.
Just not hockey.
Just not hockey.
All right.
Ringwald Theater in Ferndale has Stephen Sondheim's Company, which of course has won 7 Tony Awards. If you like Shakespeare, you've got a couple of options. Slipstream Theater Initiative in Ferndale has Othello, and Wayne State's Hilberry Theater has King Lear.
High school ruined Shakespeare for me. Once I was forced to read it, I felt like I couldn't enjoy it.
Oh, really? I see like Hamlet and some of that. I can
You
still
strike
get
me as a
into.
Shakespeare kind of guy.
Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him well. Thursday, May 10th, you've got an evening of wine and magic with George Tate. That's happening at the War Memorial in Grosse Pointe. I like this up close magic that they do. The kind of the psychological.
So this is
stuff.
like pick a card, any card, like they're standing like right in front of you.
Not the big showy Vegas type
Where
stuff.
David
right?
Copperfield's getting sued for hustling a crowd underneath the
Exactly.
stage to the exit.
And also some news we want to let you know about. Friend of the show, Satori Shakur, who runs the Secret Society of Twisted Storytellers. We had her on the show a few months back. WDET, the Detroit Public Radio station, has published the first episodes of Season 2 of their podcast, which takes stories from the Secret Society of Twisted Storytellers and compiles them. So the first episode, Hot Feet, is out now, and the second episode is going to be out May 10th. There will be 6 episodes in all. So if you like podcasts about Detroit, I highly recommend that you go check it out, and congratulations to Satori Shakur.
This is the Deep.
Detroit.
This is the Deep
Brief.
All right, we did all right? Even without Becky here?
I feel like we just, we got through it.
We got through it, but
there
there's
was
a hole.
There's
right?
definitely something missing
a
tonight.
hole.
Yeah.
There's definitely something missing. There was a lot of testosterone.
And she kind of balances that out well.
She does. All right, we miss you, Becky. She'll be back with us next week. In fact, when we drop Thursday's episode is going to be with Allie Willis. You were with her when she did this interview, right?
You've got to hear this interview. This is one of my favorites.
So for people who don't know, tell them who Allie Willis is.
She is a songwriter who is from Detroit, and you may not know her name, but you sure as heck know her songs. Earth, Wind & Fire's September, I'll Be There For You from the Rembrandts, the theme song from Friends, and so many more.
Yeah, so we will drop that interview on Thursday. And of course, Becky will be back with us next week. I want to thank our other guests in tonight's show. We've got Amy Cooper from Acronym Detroit. Go check out her upcoming art exhibit that's happening at Tangent Gallery. Also, RJ Fox, the author of Awaiting Identification. New book. Go check it out. All about dead people from Detroit.
And their backstories. And who they were.
If you like this podcast, there's a number of different ways that you can listen. First of all, we have an Alexa skill now, right?
So you just say, Alexa, bring it to me.
Not quite. All right, repeat after me. Alexa, enable the Debrief podcast.
Enable the Debrief podcast.
That's it. All you have to do is say it once, and then
So
every
help me
time
God.
after that, if you say, Alexa, play the Debrief podcast, It'll pull up the latest episode.
Alexa, play the deep. Am I still repeating or okay?
Go ahead.
Alexa, play the Debrief podcast.
I just like to do that because I like to imagine that we've got a bunch of listeners out there with echoes in the room, and we're just screwing with everybody's system. But yeah, go ahead and try it. Of course, if you prefer, we have a mobile app you can download. Works on iPhones, works on Android phones, and you can find us wherever you find podcasts. So you can find us in Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Stitcher or Google Play Music.
I can't stress this enough. If you don't know how to do podcasts, just download the app. Listen there.
If you do know how to listen to a podcast, subscribe, leave a review. That helps other people find the show. And of course, if you put on events yourself, you want us to know about it, maybe mention it on the show, you can always send announcements to press at thedebriefdetroit.com. All right, Jag.
We survived.
We survived. We'll see you next week.
The Debrief.
Your guide to Detroit's arts and entertainment scene.